Hello, I'm Pastor Gray, pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church of Longview, Texas. Thank you for tuning in to our services. I'm praying that God would do something in your heart as you listen to the message. The number one core value here at Emmanuel is the preeminence of Christ, that in all things he might have the glory. God bless you. Enjoy the service.
We are people of faith. We are what the world calls believers. There's a phrase in the New Testament that says when they described these people that followed that risen Jesus, they said, well, they are of that way. You'll notice that way. Those people. They were the believers. They are people that we call people of faith. We are not people of coincidence. We are not people of the East Texas slang term for coincidence, coinkydinks. We are not uh-oh people. We are not really people. We are people that believe that God is in heaven orchestrating and putting together a master plan. Not as we live our life, but he has already put together a master plan for our life. That's two ways of looking at that. God is not an evolutionary God. God does not wake up and see what is going on, then quickly responds. He does not have a think tank of people ready to roll out a response. He doesn't have that. God has already mastered your life, my life. So there is no such thing as a coincidence. There's no such thing as luck. Lady Luck does not live in the life of a believer, or should not live in the life of a believer. In Luke chapter 10, you'll look at verse number 30, and God gives us a story. Very familiar story, very famous story. And Jesus answering said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, which stripped him of his raiment and wounded him and departed, leaving him half dead. And by chance there came down a certain priest that way. And when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. And likewise a Levite, when he was at a place, came and looked on him and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came near where he was, and when he saw him, he had what? Compassion on him. And he went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring in oil and wine, and set him on his beast, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. And on the morrow, when he departed, he took out 2 pence, and gave them to the host, and said unto him, take thy care of him, and whatsoever thou spendest more, when I come again, I will repay. Which now of these 3 thinkest thou was neighbor unto him that fell among thieves? And he said, he that showed mercy on him. Then said Jesus unto him, read the last phrase, please. Go and do thou likewise. You'll find here in verse number 3, and by chance. The word chance there does not mean, oh, really? It means that while they were on this journey, they had the chance. They had the opportunity to respond. It doesn't mean that there was an uh-oh. No. God said, here's this man in this condition, and by chance, by this opportunity that you have. And in your life and in mine, and this is not the scripture that we're going to dive into this morning, it is a launching scripture that tells you this. You and I are going to journey through life. And there will be times that we do not know from point A to point B what is going to happen to us, what is going to be around us, and that God expects us, according to this parable, according to the story. Let's read the last phrase again in verse 37. Then said Jesus unto him, read it, go and do thou. Now let's go to the book of Esther, if you will. If you'll find the book of Esther. The book of Esther. And those of you who have thumb tabs, you're cheating. But if you'll find Psalms, back up to Job, and you'll run into the book of Esther. If you go to Esther chapter 4 and verse number 1, is where we're going to go. Esther chapter 4 and verse number 1. Last week, I asked you in the very beginning of the sermon, how shall we do? To keep that story, to keep a book. Just keep a book of situations that you faced that you were like, what am I going to do? No. Change it to how shall we do? And let's see what God has to do. Last Sunday night, one of our young adults hung around and he came into the office and he said, hey, I need to tell you a story. I won't go into the whole story, but as he was sitting there, you could see that this young adult man, his confidence in God just started picking up the more he started to talk about how God did this and did this and did this. And last Sunday night, he entered into this week with more of a confidence of God. This is what 2021 is all about. It is all about when we face situations, we do not face them with a panic that paralyzes. We face them with this confidence through temporary nervousness that God, you did it back here. God, you're going to do it again. Boy, I hope you're tracking in that you're tracking somewhere all these times. I promise you at the end of the year, it's going to be amazing. I'm going to ask you to get another journal. I'm going to ask you to get another journal that as you're journeying through life, that you understand God has not put you as his child to go from point A to point B without making an impact in somebody's life. Esther chapter 4, when Mordecai perceived that all was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. Esther 4:3. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. The reason being that a decree went out to kill all the Jews. All the Jews were going to be destroyed by that wicked Haman and his plot. Esther being a Jew, Mordecai being a relative, and this is the reason that Mordecai was in such anguish. Verse 4. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it to her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatach, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. Would you please underline those two phrases there? Why it was, what it was, and why it was. Your connect with people cannot be just simply something's wrong. No. It's time as believers that we stopped saying, well, yeah, there is a problem. And I want to correlate it with the Samaritan parable story back here. The Levite and the other one said, yeah, there's a problem. Obvious there's a problem. You know what the Samaritan did? The Samaritan stopped and he said this, I want to know, what is it? Why is it? What is going on? Why? How did we get here? Yesterday, I had the privilege, and I believe they're watching this morning, I had the privilege of meeting two teenagers. One is named Janie, and the other is named Christian with a K. We stood on that front porch for 35 minutes in the cold. I mean, it was cold, y'all. You people from the north, it was cold. 45, sun shining. I mean, it was cold, man. It was, the wind was just causing me pneumonia, diphtheria. I mean, it was bad. In fact, I feel bad right now. But we stood there for 40 minutes, and I watched two teenagers reach down into their world and pull out their life and put it right there for Pastor. When we kept talking, the aunt stepped out. And Brother Lawrence and I were standing there, and as this aunt stepped out, all of a sudden, when I found out the what of a situation and the why. Now, listen, I know what to do. This is where we're at. Well, I don't even know what to do for them. The reason we don't know what to do for anybody is because we've not taken the time to find out the what of a situation and the why of a situation. And if you'll notice here in Esther, this is such a beautiful correlation passage. So look at verse 6. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai into the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. And he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, and to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king and make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for the people. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. You know that Esther said, what Mordecai needs is what I perceive. If Mordecai is naked and Mordecai has ashes, then would you take these clothes to Mordecai and would you kind of clean them up? Because that's what I think he needs. Mordecai said, it's not what I need. Not what I need. And I think that if you and I are going to make an impact in the society around us, it needs to come down to this. Stop perceiving what people need and start knowing what and why is this happening. What is the why? What is the why? What is the what? What is going on? Talk to me. Yesterday, I kept using these words, and Janie and Christian would attest to this. Hey, I hope I'm not intruding, but could you tell me what is going on? Then all of a sudden, when they told me what was going on, just like Mordecai said, look, read the decree yourself. Here is the perilous situation that we're in. Then look at verse number 9. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. And Esther spake unto Hatak, and gave him commandments unto Mordecai, and all the king's servants, and the people of the king's province do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the what, please? As soon as Esther knew the what and the why, then guess what Esther knew? She knew where to go. That's amazing. Here is where Christianity takes a big turn for the society. Please don't disconnect with my words right now. It's going to snow, but it's not coming right now. Listen. God is taking you through a place. And God's going to let you see a situation. And God's going to let you know this situation is your opportunity. But you won't know where to go and what to do until we slow down long enough and find out the why and the what. And as soon as you know the why, and as soon as you know the what, then you know where to go. And all the king's servant, the people of the king's province, verse 11, do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there's one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. For I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. And they told Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not within thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come into the what? Kingdom for such a time as this. You know, these are amazing words because they're mixed with a doubt. You know what the doubt here by Mordecai is? Please read it and fascinate yourself by this one thought. He said, Esther, you're not exempt. And Esther, if you reveal that you are a Jew, you're not exempt. The king will do to you. The decree does not give any waivers here. But God from someplace else. Mordecai's thinking was this. Look at verse number 16, I mean. I'm sorry, verse number 14. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from where, please? Another place. Mordecai said this. Let's just keep it under the radar. Maybe God will bring it from another place. But then Mordecai says this. Well, maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe he'd just been put in that position for such a time as this. If we as Emmanuel Baptist Church see the plight of men around us, and we as Emmanuel Baptist Church see the problems around us that cross our paths, and we simply say, well, somebody else will see it too. Somebody else will take care of it also. Some other church will get involved. Somebody else will take care of it. No, I'm a firm believer that if you're his child, then you are his pawn. If you are his child, you are his hands. You are his pocketbook. You are his mind. You have been pulled off the bench. You have been put into the game. God is looking down that bench for a left-handed hitter that can hit that pitcher. He doesn't pick those. You get off the bench. You're the right guy for this at-bat. And there are a lot of times in your life and in my life that we look at what we've been through and we say to ourselves, well, I don't even like what I've been through, so why would it even be of value to somebody else? Oh, that's not true. God has so orchestrated your path, your life, your way, that when you are taking your journey as his child, you, my friend, are going to have the position to make a difference. The title this morning is For Such a Time as This. In the man that was by the road, others said, recognized he needed help. But one man said, I want to know why and what is going on. Because when I know the why and the what, then what I can do is I can get you to the who. Everybody here knows Jesus Christ as your Savior. He's been good to you. How many could test he's been good to you? How many could say he's blessed you? Yes. How many could say that there were dark days you didn't know how you were going to get out of it, but God came through? Yes, somebody else needs to know that about your God. And God has brought you through some things to where you can turn around and say, hey, see that scar right there and see that scar right there. And let me tell you about that day right there. And let me tell you about that day right there. And God is doing that so that you can get off the sidelines and you can stop feeling unfulfilled and that you can get in somebody's life and make a difference. When life is a mirror, you don't care about anybody else. You just come and go in this selfish world. But when you realize I am an Esther, and as long as I take the attitude of I got to meet a need, rather than I want to know the what and the why of a situation. This famous story has all the elements of a great drama. If you were to put it into a play, the casting would go like this: Vashti, the banished queen; Esther, the new darling of the kingdom; Mordecai, the doting relative; Haman, the evil rogue; the king, the ruling power. The story is filled with twists and turns at every corner. But ultimately, the twists and turns of every player in the story is guided by the great writer, Jehovah. You have the story opening up with a classic response of a no by Vashti to a lewd and lustful king. Vashti is deposed from being queen. Esther is put in her place by coming in first at a worldwide, a countrywide beauty pageant. Mordecai thwarts a plot to overthrow the government. Evil Haman formulates a plot to annihilate the Jews. At the request of Mordecai, Esther agrees to help the Jews by approaching the king. Esther prepares a banquet to explain to the king what is going on with the plot to kill the Jews. Jealous Haman builds some gallows with which he plans to hang Mordecai. The king's reward for Mordecai's loyalty to the king by honoring him, he uses Mordecai's arch enemy Haman to lead the festivities. Esther reveals to Haman a devious plot to kill the Jews of the king. to the king at the banquet. Haman is found out. God pushes Haman on the bed of the queen. At the very moment the king walks back in, Haman is hanged on the very gallows that were built for Mordecai. The Jews are saved, and everyone lives happily ever after. Woo! What a story. Want to know why? Because there's a God that says, Mordecai, you be there. Esther, you be right there. And everybody played their role. And I'm calling on you as members of Emmanuel and as family members of the great family of Christians to stop looking at your life in light of inconvenience and insignificance and realize that God just doesn't want to use you for one moment like Esther in the story. God wants to use you for multiple moments in your life. I want you to start keeping track this year of those moments that you were brought into the kingdom for such a time as this. What situations have you been put in thus far that you pulled over, took the time to be inconvenienced to meet a need, not even realizing the impact that it would have, not even realizing what would happen down the road? These moments, I think, don't necessarily need to be public, but they do need to be publicized and published in your life, because it just shows you God's in control. God's in control. God knows what he's doing. God put this person in my path, and God put this person in my path. Last Saturday, Kelly and I were cutting down 42, and we were going to see Brian in Napua. Did I get that right? Did I get it right? Hang loose. Okay, and she's from Hawaii. I'm going to get it right. And where they have the ugly. Can I just disrespect Hawaii right now? That ugly lihimoi. And how many know what lihimoi is? Okay. How many do not know what lihimoi is? You're blessed. So Miss Kelly loves lihimoi. And so we're cutting down 42, and there was this van with the hood up. Just something simple. Van with the hood up. And we are just a little bit late getting to them. And so I pulled the truck in. Now I can tell you that I put together toy cars when I was little. I am a mechanic. Thank you, Miss Anderson, for laughing at me. And Brother Larry, thank you for just dropping your head and shaking it. I'm trying to act like with this guy that I know what I'm doing. So I pulled the truck up, and I have never flipped that lever on the hood of that truck the entire time I've owned the truck. And so I flipped the lever on that truck. Miss Kelly's sitting behind there just going. So this guy's broke down, the hood's up. And so the whole time I'm trying to do it, I'm looking at Kelly over the thing. I'm going, I can't get it open. I can't. This guy's like, thank you for stopping. Can you give me a jump? I'm like, we'll give you a jump. I can't get it open. Well, you know, I figured out there's a, y'all don't know this? There's a spring on that truck that when you pee, it whoop, like that. That was amazing. I'm glad I live in the 21st century. That is amazing. So I'm looking for something, right? So I find it, but y'all, it won't move. Well, things make fun at me. Okay, people, I don't care. But when something won't move, then I think it's taking on life of its own. And now it's going, I'm not opening up for you. And I'm saying, yes, you are opening up for me. And yeah, I'm not opening up. So I'm talking to this thing. And so I ripped that thing out of there in anger. It's the rubber stud that keeps this hood from bouncing up and down. There's two of those things. And I'm sitting there holding it going, oh, okay. So I So now I've got to look for this. So I find the latch. It goes up. The rubber thing's missing on this part. There's one rubber thing on this part. The latch hood's right there. And so I'm trying to get it back in. And I was like, okay, we're ready to go. So now I turn around and go, let's get you jumped off. He goes, man, thank you. Well, he has the jumper cables. Well, y'all, the last time I've looked at a battery to jump off, it has two little posts right there. Are y'all with me? 2 posts. So I'm sitting there looking at this battery, and everybody knows batteries sit this way. They don't sit this way. What kind of truck has a battery sit this way? It's supposed to sit this way. And so I'm looking at this thing, and I am like, and he's standing there hooked up, ready to go. And he's waiting for me, because it's my truck, to jump in. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. You already have him in your hand. And I'm going, dear God, I hope he knows what he's doing. And so he hooked it up there, and he hooked it to something back there. And he looked at his wife, and said, I try it. And that thing kicked over. And I was like, want me to take them off for you? And so it was sad. It was sad. That guy looked at me, and she did, and he said, thank you. Thank you. We were stranded, and I have to get to work, and cell phones are dead. I don't know what is going to happen. Went back to the truck, and I got some tracts about the church, turned around, and you see, at this point, so what happened? He got his truck jumped and he went to work. So what did you get out of it? He got his truck jumped and went to work? Y'all with me? So what benefit was it for you? I learned how to open my truck hood. The world is so waiting for, I'll help you, but what do I get out of it? That after a couple of times of helping somebody, well, they can't help me. That Christians have backed up, and now we pick and choose our good Samaritan deeds based on what we think we're going to get out of it. I wasn't trying to get anything out of it. There was a man with his hood up that needs somebody to help him. I'll give you a couple of things, then we're headed to the house. First thing I want to tell you is God's allowing you to see things on your journey to help. That's what God's doing. God's allowing you to see things on your journey to help. You may not realize it, but that's what this society is built on. This society is supposed to be self-contained with this. If I have a need, that somebody out here will meet this need. And what better people to meet the need than children of God? Because God met our biggest need, did he not, in giving us salvation. And if you're sitting here saying, well, I got things to do, and what if they're a mass murderer? Do you know they may be thinking that about you? You may pull in to help somebody, and they may get in the van and shut it down. Don't look at them. Y'all, when are we going to understand that God has given you, and God's been good to you, God's been good to me, that we are to understand that we're going to be put in situations along the way. Number two, second thing is this: realize God's at work behind the scenes to bring you to that moment. God is working back here so that the moment you step in at the very right time. I was totally blown away yesterday, and with just that visit that happened, because the situation those two kids have found themselves in, we had a mutual acquaintance that holds the scepter to what these kids have found themselves in. And as soon as that girl said a name, as soon as Janie said a name to me, I said, oh, I know who he is. And that look on her face was, really? She said, yeah, I know exactly who he is. Aunt walked out. And I said, look, if you'll let me be your ambassador on your behalf, I think I can help fix this. They were blown away. Listen, God is doing this because he knows you're getting ready to do this. And you, my friend, hold that you know where the king's at to fix this. Don't ever discount what's going on in your life. And when you wake up this week, I'm asking you to go to that journal of your heart and go, I was able to help that family on 42. Yesterday, I was able to help that brother and sister. And just say, it's amazing. It's not lady, how lucky is that guy? Not lucky. It's just a matter of, God, what do you want? The next thing is this, stay spiritual so you can respond spiritually. Stay spiritual so you can respond spiritually. You see, the last thing anybody in needs is an unspiritual helper. You know, the gentleman that broke down, the last thing he needed from me was, when's the last time you changed your oil? Like, you got gasoline in your van? Well, what are you doing? You knew it wasn't. That's not what he needed from me. When's the first time this battery didn't start? And how? He didn't need that from me. He needed for me to say, let me open my hood of my truck. If you give me about 20 minutes, I'll get it open. You see, your spiritual perception of and how many times have we made fun of people on the side of the road? I'm raising my hand. How many times have we looked at situations and we say, well, if they'd done this and they'd done this and they'd done this and they'd done this, that's the carnal man. That's the fleshly mind. But help us be spiritual to say, hey, I just want to help. Do you know who was best at this in our church, who now is in heaven, is Kimberly McGee. Kimberly McGee would absolutely, where I would say to her, Kim, what are you doing? It was pouring down raining one time, and saw Kim the next week, and I was preaching on a subject like this, and she came down, she said, I was that angel. And I said, you were, Kim? Yeah, it was pouring down raining over there by the Whataburger and Sam's, and this guy said, we'll work for food, I'm hungry, and I pulled up and said, get in. Kim is about as skinny as that beanpole right there, and she's like, I said, Kim, do you know who he was? No, but God sent me by his way. Get in. Now I'm intrigued. What happened? He got in. I said, where'd you take him? I took him over to Whataburger. I said, when's the last time he had something to eat? He started crying. And I said, Kim, what if he would have robbed you? Spiritual pastor. What if he would have robbed you? And she said, I ain't got nothing to rob. What, Pastor, what would it matter? So I'm that kind of person too. Yeah, right. Stay spiritual. Last thing I want to tell you is this. Realize the moment you may never hear anything from. This is the qualifier of why we do what we do. We don't help people because we get something from people. We help people because that's what we do. And this year, not only would I like for you to keep track of how God pulled you out. Man, what a blessing. But if you want fulfillment to your day, start living your day like this. God, would you put somebody in my path that I could be a blessing to? The situations that would get you in trouble, I believe God would blind you to. I believe that. And I do think there's discernment and common sense. But I do believe this. All of us know of those situations that we should have took a step further that we didn't, that haunts us. How many would agree with that? Amen. You grieve. I should have went. I was asked about a certain story yesterday, Friday, and I told the people who asked me the story, I said, my biggest heartache is I had a window of opportunity, and I didn't walk through it. Let's live our life. Let's live our life for such a time as this. How do we teach our children what Christianity is? Hey, come on now. Come on. Let's stop. We're going to go help. We're going to go come to the aid. You're not going to realize that you keep doing that kind of stuff, God's going to bless you and bless you, not with what you get back, but with this blessing of saying, I didn't pass up anything. I didn't pass up anything. Heads bowed, eyes closed.